When the UN said they were moving their offices to Kenya, a lot of us came out talk about it here. And recently, I talked about that here. And some Kenyans came up and were like, UN have been existing in Kenya. It's not just today that UN is coming to Kenya. UN have been existing. So allow us with our UN, brothers and sisters. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. We will leave you with your UN brothers and sisters. But the truth is that we would not leave you with your UN brothers and sisters. Why? Because this is Africa. Kenya is in Africa. And this concerns Africans. We are only being worried for the future of the whole continent, not just of Kenya. Why are they targeting the continent of Africa at this point? There are other places where they could relocate their nations to. Remember, these people don't like Africa. They hate Africans. Let's come out openly and say these things to ourselves. These people hate Africans. They don't see Africans as equals. And they are moving their offices with 25,000 human beings. 25,000 human beings with their families and children to Kenya. There's something one of you said, and I was happy that somebody can have a thought like that. That these people are going to serve as spies, okay, for the long run to sabotage the Sahel and any country that wants to agitate for liberation. A lot of Kenyans do not see anything wrong with this. It's just those who really understand what it is to be black, what it is to be African, that understand that this is not for the best, for the good of African. It's not, it's never. One, it will even affect the economy. The poor man cannot survive freely in Kenya anymore because they're gonna alter the economy. Those with money will enjoy, but those who are poor, the masses, what do? When the ordinary Kenyan is agitating for, the economy to be stable, with their high bargaining power, they're going to sabotage everything. So the poor man will not be able to survive anymore. This is at the detriment of Africans. I'm not just going to say of Kenyans. Africans is at the detriment of Africans. Your Majesties. And then we are jumping up, say, oh, they have been in Kenya before now. They're not just coming to Kenya. Leave us with our white people.
Today we are discussing, as usual, a lot to do with the politics of East Africa and Africa at large. And today we are handling the country of Kenya. Kenya never ceases to run out of news, and every day something new seems to crop up in the Masai land. And today we're saying the hidden truth behind the UN relocating to Kenya. Ruto is at the center stage. Yes, you've heard me right. Our working title is Hidden Truth Behind UN Relocating its Offices to Kenya. Ruto is at the center stage. That's what we're going to be discussing today on Africa. The United States of America, Donald Trump, continues to send shockwaves to the entire world. UN has not been spared, was not spared, and it has had its funding cut. Okay? We understand that, the United Nations has its main offices in Geneva in Switzerland, but also some other offices in the US. Now, what happened when Donald Trump came for the second term in office? He decided to cut funding for most, organizations, for most unions, for most bodies, and the United Nations has not been spared as well, and their aid was cut. Now, United Nations, being a big entity, could as well still continue to operate, but without, the backing, without the funding of the United States of America. And what that has meant is that the UN has had to find ways of how it can operate within means that don't, that wouldn't necessarily affect their operations, okay? And we understand that they operate entirely in the whole world, but to be specific about Africa, they are trying to, get as much closer to Africa as they haven't been before. And this prompted it to start negotiating ways of how they can do that. And among them is proposing to relocate some of their offices to East Africa, and to be specific, in Kenya. That was the original idea, okay? But as time went on, they have shifted towards, entirely shifting everything, all their offices, together with its human resource, to Nairobi. Now, this has gotten mixed reactions, especially among the people of Kenya who have been under the stewardship of Dr. William Ruto, had turbulences. We've seen a lot of uprisings in Kenya, against the leadership of Dr. William Ruto. But nevertheless, Dr. William Ruto, when he got into negotiations with the UN about this, he gave them a go ahead. And at the beginning of this year, there was, an acceptance that indeed the United Nations would shift its offices to Nairobi. Okay. Now, being the longest surviving multilateral organization just behind the International Labour Organization with over 44,000 employees, the UN has helped to maintain a relative peace globally, including in Africa. Yet recently, events in the geopolitics are forcing them to rethink of its mammoth financial requirements and its relevancy. So it is out of this that a document circulated way back in May around 22nd that among the staff said was that several agencies, including those in charge of the welfare of children, gender and population services, as well as procurement, could be merged. Okay, this was meant to, to cure the problem of overlapping mandates, inefficient use of resources, and also inconsistencies in delivery of services. There was also, a proposal to relocate the UN Agency for Coordination of Human Rights Affairs to be closer to where it is most needed, and that is in Africa. Okay? And among the countries that were selected, or the country that was selected to host this, is Kenya. However, as time went on, the tone has changed into relocating the entire entity of UN to Kenya, and Dr. William Ruto gave them a go-ahead, gave them a reception, and they started building for their employees schools, houses, accommodation, and offices are almost down. Now, there are two things that you can look at in this scenario. One, where does this leave Kenya itself and Dr. William Ruto? How does it affect East Africa and its cooperation with the US? How does it correlate with, the shift, the African shift towards, towards BRICS allying, towards BRICS from NATO alignment? How does that, correlate? But also, what image does it show to the entire world? Let me start with the BRICS issue. Now, we all understand that for some time, BRICS has been cooking. And among the things at the forefront is ensuring that Africa is within, that they are having a very good cordial relationship with Africa, especially East Africa. And among the very first countries to be allying with the BRICS is Uganda, which is an East African country. Okay. Then after a given period of time, for over time, we have always known that Kenya is a non-allying, they call it, a country that believes in the ideologies of NATO, but is not directly a member of NATO. NATO non-allying country, Kenya, okay? So its alignment and ideologies and, direct cordial relationship is with NATO countries. But there was a shift in events, and towards the end and the beginning of the end of the last year and the beginning of this year, Dr. William Ruto started shifting towards the east as well, aligning more to the BRICS than to the NATO countries. And this angered, the United States of America. And in a short spell, he was called in the US to, find a solution. But nevertheless, he continued having a cordial relationship in China, with Russia, and other Far East countries. Now, this means that the little grip that the NATO and the Europe, NATO, and the United States of America, the grip that they've had on East Africa, in Africa, entrenched through Kenya, was dwindling as well. Because if this is a non-NATO allying country, but is now starting to have more trading partnerships with the Far East, is something to ponder about. And we've seen a lot of, the congressmen of the US speaking about this, that we cannot let a non-NATO our partnership country start trading directly with our nemesis in China and Russia. And they were referring to Kenya, and this did not go down well with Dr. William Ruto. So this, transfer of UN offices now to Nairobi, for me, at a personal level, I see it as a way of, again, finding more control over Kenya that would spill over to the entire region of East Africa and Africa at large. Okay, so indirectly or directly, Kenya is to be used for for Europe and these other countries, US and UK, to get more grip on the region. Okay, to deter what had started happening, where at one point Dr. William Ruto is himself quoted saying that he was after the de-dollarization of his economy because he wasn't seeing the economic benefit of it. Why his people, or why he would be trading in a dollar when the arrangement had nothing to do with any dollar country. So it is another way of gripping on East Africa, on Kenya as well, to show them that we actually own you, we are in control. Okay? And people might well not look at it that way. Others would say, no, the UN, after, losing the funding from Donald Trump, could as well be genuinely trying to go to a nation where the cost of living is low than compared in Geneva, in Switzerland, and the United States of America. But the question is, why would they think, of all countries, Kenya, too, if they are at a level where they have to look for an area where there is, cheap operational costs? Why are they in existence for the first place? Okay, so to me, that sounds and seems like a cover-up for their transfer of all entity to Kenya. It seems like a cover-up. Now, the other point is, how does this affect the region? It affects the region in, both positively and negatively. First of all, the region and the people of Nairobi would have said, okay, we have gotten an opportunity to also have those, white-collar jobs and be able maybe to work with the UN, because you would expect out of 44,000 jobs, at least 25,000 would go to the people of East Africa as a bloc. But what is happening is that the UN is going to come with the entire workforce from wherever they have been and center in Nairobi. And that is why they're building schools, they're building hospitals, they're building like more of a mini city in Kenya. So it means that the local day-to-day person would not benefit from being employed by the UN. Maybe just remnants of it. They could have 20, 30 people being employed, but the entire chunk of their employees are the already existing non-Kenyan employees. So in one way, shape or form, Kenya is not benefiting. The region is not benefiting. The only way they are benefiting is prestige. To say, oh, UN offices are located in Nairobi. But how does it benefit? Apart from, now that the UK and the US and these, UN subscribing countries are going to have more eyes on ground in East Africa in disguise of help to children, to HIV and AIDS patients, to the education sector and all that. Okay, we understand that sometimes there are dubious dealings that go through these entities entrenched into East Africa and Africa. So it is not only positive that they are coming and settling in Kenya, but also relatively negative because people are not going to be employed because they're coming with their workers, but also more eyes are now on Africa. By the time there is going to be spillover to the region. In the recent past, we've had a lot of uprisings that have, like I had already said in this video, in Kenya. So how secure are the employees of United Nations in a country that literally has demonstrations every after 3-4 months? How secure are they? And it's, by the way, one of the things that some of the employees already are talking about, that they are not very sure about their security in Kenya and therefore are pondering whether they should indeed follow the offices to Nairobi as well. Because the uprisings in Kenya are seemingly increasing on a daily, especially under the stewardship of Dr. William Ruto, who seems not to find a solution to the root cause of the problem. So the UN workers themselves are not sure of their security and their existence in Nairobi, and therefore leaves the entire program in limbo despite the direction that it is taking, that anytime soon they will be transferred to that country. Okay, now where does this leave William Ruto? It shows you how much Dr. William Ruto is entrenched in making more money for the country first, but also for himself, because it is said that about 300 million US dollars traded sites, were given to the government of Dr. William Ruto in preparation for the transfer of the UN offices. So whether you like it or not, there are monies that have gone to his pockets, but also monies that have been received directly and in the rightful way to his government. And we understand that he has been fighting tooth and nail to ensure that he brings down the debt burden that he inherited when he was becoming the president of Kenya. So whichever way is bringing in money into the coffers of Kenya, including, by the way, the operation in Haiti, is something that Dr. William Ruto is willing to do. But how does this reflect before his population that are already on his neck for the corruption that is grappling his government, his leadership? It will show you that if not put right, there are going to be more uprisings as a result of this very thing. So many Kenyans are likely to run against these happening in Nairobi because they know at the end of the day they are not going to benefit as the natives, as the local populace, but rather something that is going to benefit government officials. So it is likely that this deal is going to happen, will indeed happen, but it will have very great ripple effects, both positive and negative, on the region, on Kenya itself, but also Africa as a country. It is far-fetched that the UN would think of all places to put their offices in Kenya. Why in Africa? Why not in Asia? Okay, your nemesis. Why not in, UN allying countries? Why not UK or US? Why specifically East Africa or Nairobi? That leaves questions.